The Last of Us was a gaming phenomenon when it released back in 2013. Appreciated by almost everybody that played it, it became a benchmark of the gaming industry. Not only did it provide great third-person gameplay with creative elements added in to keep the story mode fresh, but it showed the world just how much of a narrative a video game can have. Coming from a game that had me tearing up within the first 15 minutes to feeling hate towards another character later on in the story mode was no doubt a success. Of course, this was no surprise for the developer Naughty Dog, since they have had similar success with the Uncharted series amongst other old school games. While most of us can agree that the story mode was fantastic, the real underlying problem with The Last of Us was its criminally underrated multiplayer. The multiplayer for The Last of Us was one of the most refreshing gaming experiences I've had up to that point. Not only was it fresh and new, but it also kept the cinematic feeling of the story mode. While I was in these multiplayer lobbies, fighting for my life, it still felt like I was a survivor, just doing whatever I can to stay alive. You had crafting, healing mode, as well as weapons that were familiar from the campaign. All of these things seemed like the perfect formula for a hype multiplayer that would take off and keep people coming back, but they didn't. Despite the small light it got from several Twitch streamers and YouTubers, the multiplayer was pretty much swept under the rug when compared to the campaign. You see, the thing about The Last of Us Online is that it differs from a lot of other games. It was creative, it was cinematic, but probably the most important thing, it was brutal. You see, a lot of modern gamers are used to a more accessible type of multiplayer. We as humans do not like to do things we are not particularly good at. We live in a gaming generation where we believe that we have to be naturally good at a game in order to invest time into it. People that look up to big streamers like Shroud or Summit think that all the skill they possess comes automatically, when the truth is that they have thousands of hours of experience on their games of choice. Similar to games like Gears of War, League, or Rainbow Six, The Last of Us had a steep learning curve. While the mechanics were simple enough to get through the campaign for first-time players, things like inventory management, hero mode management, as well as third-person camera tricks all came into play in multiplayer. The item crafting system was simple enough for the most part. Just like the story mode, the game told you what items you were missing to create that item, and you went on looking for them. Simple enough, right? Well, the thing is that in a game like The Last of Us, you could also use your inventory to make things that didn't seem as exciting for new players. Like a shiv, for example, which helped you insta-kill enemies from behind, or a plank that can one-shot enemies if upgraded. A lot of the new players tended to make things that sounded cool, like bombs or molotovs, and as good as these items were, they were not always needed for the situation they found themselves in. The same thing can be said for the parts mechanic. Parts can be found in item boxes littered around the map or by the body of a dead enemy. These parts can then be used to upgrade your gear, buy armor, or buy ammo. These might seem simple enough, but at times you can be put up with some tough choices of what to spend your parts on for that particular moment. While armor is good and can stop you from getting one shot by certain weapons, sometimes you may need those few extra bullets to get out of the next confrontation alive. These choices eventually become easier as you become a seasoned player, but for newcomers, they can seem extremely daunting. Unlike the story mode, the enemies are not brain-dead AI that chase you every chance they get, but are instead actual thinking players who most likely have a good number of hours on the game more than you. Unlike other games at the time, The Last of Us did not rely on aim or reaction time. It instead relied on your inventory and ability management, your positioning, as well as your communication with the rest of your team. A decent team would usually walk around in a squad, or as some people called, a wolf pack, or in pairs. This means that most confrontations you got into were usually against more than just one person, and this takes teamwork to overcome. If you or your team were solo wandering around, then that was probably a quick loss for you. To somebody who is new to a game like this might seem overwhelming at first, and they weren't wrong. The first game I had online, I was utterly destroyed by a 4-stack, and I knew exactly what they were doing. Getting demolished on my first game was extremely discouraging, but coming from a Gears of War background, I knew that I had to put time into this game in order for me to reach the levels of the players that beat me, and I did. I played this game non-stop over the course of a year and a half. I would be at school thinking about playing and watching videos on things that would make me a better player. As the months went on, I saw myself improving, and that's where the beauty of the game really shines. Unlike other multiplayer games that reward you with hundreds of new weapons or cosmetic items, The Last of Us offered a form of satisfaction that can be matched by few. The satisfaction came from seeing yourself walk around aimlessly and getting destroyed to becoming a skilled veteran player a few months later. Going into games and being able to do what that 4-stack did to me months earlier was something that I took great pride in. The thing about The Last of Us is that the skill gap between good players and new players is incredibly large. You can tell how good a player is a lot of the time by just the way they move around the map. As much as I enjoyed the satisfaction that came with the game, the number of players had already dwindled down to a small amount. It saddened me that I had reached the best part of the multiplayer and very few people were going to experience it. After almost 2 years of playing the game daily, I had to stop. The matchmaking queues had become obnoxiously long due to the lack of players, and I moved on to games where I got into the action quicker and had less downtime. And just like that, one of the most innovative multiplayer games I had ever played was gone from my life. I guess what I'm trying to say is not to give up so easily on games that seem difficult. The Last of Us multiplayer was an amazing add-on to the game that very few people actually enjoyed thoroughly. With The Last of Us 2 coming soon, I hope that those of you who did not give the first game the chance it deserved jump into online matchmaking in the next game. It might be hard, it might frustrate you, but if it's anything like the first game, then trust me, it's gonna be worth it. Now I know this video was a bit different from my usual ones, but I plan on making an SS style video here and there just to keep things fresh. Anyway, if you guys haven't hit that sub button, make sure you do so you won't miss any of my future content, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Y'all have a good day, and I will see you all next time.